fell into rebels' hands, those who backed the old regime remain defiant but fearful. In parts of the city, the rebels' triumphant campaign feels like it's never happened, or did so somewhere else.
There's no better way to start the morning with a bit of RT. I mean, I'm really pleased actually, because the TV in our room here at this rather plush Travelodge has Russia Today, which is one of the it's got to be one of the best TV channels around, I must say. You want to know what's really going on, watch RT. Don't bother with the BBC and all those liars. RT at the moment is one of the few mainstream TV channels which is actually, in any way, shape or form, trying to bring real journalism into the world of news reporting. They've even had Ian on there. Well, I think he was on the online version, but you know, there's several different versions of RT. But you know, the fact they had Ian on there, Ian R. Crane, they've had other people. It's only a matter of time before they have David Icke. I just hope that they realise, you know, that they will be, you know, right as we speak, someone is now plotting a way to infiltrate RT and corrupt it. And this is what the Illuminati do to the media. They take it over. They're very sly and subtle ways of getting inside it and taking it over. And, you know, you have to be wary of that, and I hope RT are. Well, as I said, this is a nice Travelodge. I mean, Travelodges, you know, I showed you the bedroom last night, didn't I? Quite plush. Travelodges tend to be very no frills. However, this one's got a bar and it's got a little restaurant. You can order food, very good food too. You know, which is it's very, very nice indeed. And this is the view from our window. As you say, this part of Swindon is a bit Milton Keynesy, without all the Illuminati symbolism. Well, actually, apart from those big Illuminati pyramids I showed you yesterday. Well, look what's outside. Well, look what's right across the street from us. Job Centre Plus, or should I call it Slave Centre Plus? That's not the kind of thing I want to see when I wake up in the morning, or any other time of day. A centre for legalised slavery. There's no other word for it nowadays, because they're making people who have committed the crime, the sin of being unemployed, be punished by doing community service. And I'm not kidding, they are. That's exactly what's happening. The government have talked about it ever since Jeffrey Archer and Margaret Thatcher used to go on about it in the 80s. But now they're actually going to do it. Oh, the ethical and practical problems with that are so enormous I can hardly know where to start. I've written an article about this which explains it. Look in the description box, I'll put it there. It's now Sunday morning. I did a little broadcast last night, which I think was a little bit incoherent because I was rather tired and ever so slightly drunk. I think I might have made some rather rude noises as well, and I hope you didn't hear them. I had a big meal earlier on, you see. Anyway, I'm a lot more sort of with it this morning. I really, one of the highlights of this entire event, which has been an excellent conference, was seeing Graham Hancock, and he really did a really wonderful, stirring speech. I mean, he began by insulting Richard Dawkins. Oh my goodness me, Richard Dawkins, NBA bronze. How dare he? How dare he insult the glorious Richard Dawkins? But well, actually, tell you the truth, to be serious, Dawkins got what he deserved. I mean, Hancock said that Richard Dawkins was, in a sense, a religious person. What he was doing, he had a religious position, and his materialism was a form of religion, and it is actually. I mean, this is a very big philosophical debate. Skeptics all deny it. Lots of other people say it is, but Richard Dawkins He is a religious man. He believes profoundly in materialism. And of course he's very MBA, although not as MBA as some others. Like I said, there's others like Marcus du Sautoy, who are a lot more MBA. And Marcus du Sautoy is the new Professor for the Public Understanding of Science at Oxford University, the Charles Simonyi seat. Now, I've written about du Sautoy, and I've written about this whole issue in another film, and other videos, which I'll put in the description box. I've got to remember to put all these things in description boxes. mustn't lose track. I must make a note of the things I'm going to put in there. Anyway, Dawkins wrote a book called The God Delusion, which I've reviewed, and I'll put that in the description box too. It's another one to add to the list. If I forget any of these things, well, just go to the HPANWO blog, which is the link is on my channel page, and you'll be able to find these things very easily simply using the search function. But basically, Dawkins has written this book all about how the God Delusion, and that says it all. And basically, the whole thing is about, well, science is better than religion, isn't it? Yeah, science, but being interested in science is better than being interested in being a member of the church and stuff like that. Well, I'm not going to dispute that. But Dawkins, again, he has a very simplistic view of God. He doesn't really understand the issues of the theological issues involved. He has a very simplistic view of the argument, which is actually quite cliche. And Dawkins kind of I go into it more in the review. It's a big, long story. But there are lots of books that have been written to debunk him, to counter him. There is Alistair McGrath's book, The Dawkins Delusion, which says it all. Richard Dawkins, he doesn't like critics. He doesn't like criticism. He describes his critics as fleas, which is rather childish and rather snide way to put it. I mean, he writes books about things, and he gets all arsey when people write books criticising him. Good blimey, you write a book about something, you've got to be criticised. I write books. I write books too, and people criticise them. I write these articles on HPANWO, and I make these films, and I expect you guys can say whatever you like about them. When I put them in a public domain, I expect people to tell me what they think, honestly, and be truthful. I don't care what you say about them. You've got that right. You've got a right to criticise me if you want. He even beats Art 77. Who he's one of my most dedicated critics. I've got nothing against him. I think he's cool. I quite like him, actually. Graham Hancock then went on to talk about Gnosticism. Now, I described this last night again very incoherently, but he was saying that he was talking about the Gnostic image of deities, like there's God, also known as Adonai. The Masons call this God Adonai. I mean, the Masons understand this thing because they have the God called Adonai and they have the God called Jabulon. Now, Adonai is actually what the Christians call God. This is Jehovah from the Bible, what the Muslims call Allah. Jabulon is Lucifer. He's the demiurge, this lesser god, and according to the Gnostics, like the Cathars, they called him Rex Mundi. He was the creator of the earth, and the god Jehovah had no part of this. They worshipped Jehovah, but Jehovah was not the creator of the earth. And Jesus, they said, wasn't really a man, wasn't the son of God. He was God. He wasn't a human. He was like a non-human. He was like a divine spirit. And this got the Cathars, unfortunately, wiped out in the Albigensian Crusade, which is a slightly sanitised name for one of the worst crimes ever committed in history. In the 13th century, a huge army went into the south of France and basically wiped out the entire population. I mean, who knows how many people were killed? Hundreds of thousands, million? A lot. So Graham Hancock, he did this really stirring, really anti-NBA speech, I'd say, talking about how he believed that the religions were actually worshipping the demiurge. They were worshipping this Rex Mundi Jabulon character. No, I don't think that's true. I think that they're, in a sense, the Illuminati are worshipping the dark force, Satan. They're Satanists. This is why they do these evil things. And Graham Hancock says, what does it take to take a man alive, strap him to a stake and burn him? That's not the religion of love. To walk into a village and kill everybody. That's not the religion of love. One of the most awful parts of the Bible is when King Herod orders the killing of all infants in Bethlehem. just to make sure he kills Jesus. It's one of the most terrible parts of the Bible. But then, of course, this is exactly what the church itself did 1,000 years later. In its inquisitions, in its crusades, in its brutality. The crusades, are often seen as very much like a very sort of partisan. The historians of the crusades tend to be very partisan. They're either pro-Islam or pro-Christian. In truth, what put an end to the crusades was when, after his victory, Saladin ordered that Jerusalem be made open to all people. So in a sense, he was the guy who offered out the olive branch. It wasn't the Christians, it was the Muslims who offered the olive branch and said, we're going to make, after their victory, they seized power, and they said, we'll open Jerusalem to the world, you Christians can come back in, there'll be no trouble. That to me is more wisdom in that. There's more, that to me is wiser and more sensible, more mature. So this is why I sort of think that was really the wisest move anyone made in the Crusades, whatever the rights and wrongs of the other parts of it. I haven't discussed it in detail. Now, the next speaker was Anthony Peake. Now, I want to get one of his books, actually. His first book was called Is There a Life After Death? And the conclusion of the book is yes. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to offer Anthony Peake the MBA. He's truly and utterly a jelly. He's so far below Richard Dawkins and Marcus du Sautoy that those men should wipe their boots on Anthony Peake's hair. But basically, seriously, it was a good speech, and I really enjoyed it. He studied near-death experiences and things like that, and he's studied the holographic universe. Hey, he mentions Michael Talbot and people like that, and how they have had this theory about, very complicated, I can't really describe it in detail, about how the universe is a hologram, and it's defined in that famous poem by William Blake: to see the world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That is kind of like the holographic universe, because small things contain the whole. This is the thing about holograms. Every part contains a piece of the whole, and the whole is like a part. It's what Ken Wilber calls a holon. Now, Ken Wilber, going into Ken Wilber is too much to discuss. So I really enjoyed his speech, and but one thing he did do is he said, look, if the scientists are debunking near-death experiences, it's not a conspiracy. It's just because they're scared of losing the paradigm. Well, Anthony, yes, it is a conspiracy. The conspiracy to keep this secret from us, the thing about life after death, is probably the biggest secret. And there is a conspiracy to stop it, to stop this information getting out. And it's, in a sense, it's even bigger than the UFO thing. So, that is one thing where there is a conspiracy going on, and that's what you've got to realise. The basic theme of both these two speakers, who complemented each other wonderfully, was that the oppression we're under and the problems with this world are, essentially, it's not something that can be solved by voting for a new party, or things like that. It's not a political problem. It's not a left-brain, rational problem-solving problem we've got here. It's, in its essence, it's a spiritual problem. And this is what all movements, such as democracy, fascism, communism, all these various other movements, these revolutions that have happened, where they think, we're going to make a better world by bringing in this new system. All these things were deluded because they failed to understand that. And much evil was done, actually, as a result. It wasn't just failure. I mean, it was very much a regression to barbarism in some cases. In the cases of, say, Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, it was very much a regression into barbarism. And Hancock and Peake both understand that the reason for this is that we don't understand that this is a spiritual issue. You know, the politics has to take account of the spiritual. So you can't discuss conspiracies without understanding that the very what underlies them all is this spiritual conspiracy. And Matthew Delusion puts it very well when he says it's the source of all these evils is not in this world. You can't go out and shoot the Illuminati, even if you knew who they all were, because how long would it take us before we chose another Illuminati to rule us? It's a spiritual, it's from another dimension. Yeah, I mean, if you found out the names of every single person in the 13 families and you went out and shot them, I mean, it would give me great satisfaction to do that, quite frankly. But how long would it, you know, it wouldn't solve anything, because we'd soon elect another Illuminati. As I said, they played a passive role. And in a sense, there's no point playing victim. This is what this understanding has led me to believe, what David Icke has also explained to me very, very well. You can't play victim, okay, because at the end of the day, the Illuminati are only here because we've given them fertile ground to grow. It's like the parable of the sower, which Jesus talked about. You know, the seed falls on fertile ground. And it did, and it grew. And in this case, it wasn't the word of God, it was the Illuminati. They're here because we let them in, and when we give them, we laid out the welcome mat, and we provide a safe haven from them and a nice warm bed. And we've got to stop doing that. The solution is not to fight the Illuminati per se. The solution is for us to stop being the kind of people who allow them into our lives. So really, the true enemy is within. I often refer to our enemies being the Illuminati or whatever, but the enemy is in here. This is where your enemy is, right? It's inside you. As it was very well illustrated in The Prisoner. Do you remember in that TV show The Prisoner, where number 6 is finally confronted with number 1, and it turns out number 1 is himself. Neil Kramer puts this very well, actually. Neil Kramer's a brilliant man. He spoke at I've seen him at a couple of conferences. And with that thought, I shall leave you until later on, when I shall bring you the details of Sunday, the second day of this Weird 11 conference. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.